Hello everybody, welcome to the latest edition of the Coaching Conversation. In this series, we're aiming to help business owners, business leaders and fellow coaches by sharing our experience and the experience of our guests who've coached people all around the world in all of different sectors and industries that you can imagine. So very little more to say other than do please now sit back, relax and enjoy this edition, and look out for a special offer for our loyal audience at the end of the programme. Hello everybody, welcome to the latest edition of the Coaching Conversation. And today I'm super excited to tell you I'm joined by Rita Malvone all the way from Shanghai. Rita has a fantastically interesting model for helping business leaders improve their performance for themselves and their team, and she calls it the Chiropractic Leadership Method. Boy, I want to find out more about that. First of all, we need to find out more about Rita. Rita, you're a New Yorker in Shanghai. Oh, how did that happen?
That's a fantastic question. Thank you so much for having me here, Graham. My journey started actually with Ford Motor Company. I left New York in 2000 actually to move to Michigan. Worked with Ford for a number of years, and they said, "Would you like to go overseas?" And I thought, "Sure, no problem. I would love to go overseas. Where am I going? England, Thailand?" They said, "No, you're moving to Nanjing, China." I said, "What? Where?" And so that's how I landed actually in China. And I had been here one time before and had an incredible experience, but it was definitely a different culture. So when I moved to Nanjing, I had to decide, is this it's just a couple of years. You could do anything for a few years. And within 3 months, I was asked to move down to Shanghai. And Shanghai to me was like New York City on steroids. It's everything that I wanted. And when it was time for me to repatriate, I looked around and said, actually, I think I want to stay. And so began my journey in Shanghai. And I've been here 15 years now. I left Ford in 2014 after a 14-year career with the company, and decided I wanted to try life on my own, taking some of the skills and some of the tools that I had learned, but really being able to be in an environment where I could affect change in a much more powerful and fast way than I could inside of a company of that magnitude. So that's how I ended up here, and fell in love with the city and the people and all the incredible opportunities that you have living in a major international city, especially in Asia right now.
Right. And so did you just straight from Ford into your own practice for performance improvement? Is that the story, the chronology?
Pretty much. I didn't expect this to happen. I really thought I would leave Ford and find another job and settle into another company. But what started to happen was people would come to me for some problem that they had or some challenge that they needed short time help with. They didn't need me as a full-time employee. They needed me as a resource, a consultant, an advisor, somebody not building arts and charts, but somebody really getting their hands dirty, working with the teams to change them. And I started to realize, well, I actually like this. I like being able to work with a bunch of different companies. And what I started to find out was there's a pattern to the solutions. Every problem is different, but there's a pattern to the tweak, which is how the chiropractic method came about, right? And that's how I ended up starting the performance consulting company, and it's been over 10 years now that's been going strong. And I started it with, let's see what happens. We'll give it 6 months and X amount of dollars, and here we are 10 years later, a small team, and still having the time of my life doing it.
We're going to get on to just exactly what the chiropractic method is, but I'd really like to understand who a typical client has become. What are their challenges? What do they look like? What are they looking
Yeah.
for?
That is a fantastic question. And I wish I could say I have a typical client. The typical client is somebody who is in pain and wants to get out of pain as quickly as they can and has a high level of trust in me and our process to get them out of pain. And so that ranges from large multinationals to family owned businesses. It comes down to, do they understand where their pain point is? Can they trust that we can adjust their business? Will they allow us to? And once they start gaining that trust and allow us in to start working with them and their teams, they see the results quickly.
And when you talk about pain points, would they typically be managerial, cultural, conflict, something like, or would they be financial, operational? What sort of challenges would they mainly be?
Yeah, I'm not a financially driven person. I don't like looking at the numbers. What I like to look at is the process. So even as far back as I can remember, I love doing puzzles and mazes and trying to see the clearest way to the solution, right? Finding that the mouse finding their cheese. And for me, what I find is there's always a roadblock, and it could be cultural. Most of the time, the process is broken, not just as a broken process, but a broken relationship or a lack of training or a lack of trust in the organization or a company culture that's more than just on paper, but they're actually living it. So once I can get in there and see where that what the path is, we can go in and fix the that roadblock. And that's what we go in and do. So it's really either process or relationship or training, but in one of those areas there's just a roadblock, and we go in and we get it out.
So
We
you
clean the path.
created this model that you call the chiropractic leadership
Yeah.
method. We've got to unpack that. You got to. I can guess where it came from, but
Sure.
what is that?
Sure.
How do you use it?
No, it's fair because it sounds so strange, but if you've ever been to a chiropractor, you might have a pain in your lower back, but they've got you on a bed with your knee over your head and your hands on your face, and then all of a sudden they go click, and that pain in your lower back, by them adjusting your shoulders, all of a sudden is gone. And that's what we do. We look at where their pain is, we look at the company's situation and see, okay, I'll give you a simple example. I have a family owned business that I've been working with for years. The two brothers run this company, and they couldn't get past a certain profitability level. Just no matter how big the team was, they weren't able to break a certain level of profit. It was a trading company. And we went in and started working the process, started looking at the business, at the total environment, getting into the granular details step by step through our creating value process, and came to realize where the true pain was. So they felt the pain in their financials. Where the true pain was in their process, in their actual um, value stream. When you went through the value stream step by step, the owner of the company, the eldest brother, had to touch the decisions 29 times. 29 times in their process, he was making a decision. Once he saw that and we stripped that out down to a reasonable number of four, profitability went up 25% because he had to see it. And so, what he thought was his pain, that lower back pain, was actually a tweak in a different part of the organization. It had nothing to do with better sales or better markets, it had to do with speed. And he was slowing down the speed of the operations. So that's what, when we talk about this chiropractic method, what we're really doing is unpacking the pain to a point that we can look at it and see really what the roadblock is. We might
Your
see the traffic jam.
diagnostic work in that situation?
Yeah.
How do you find where that pain is?
We do a lot of needs analysis, and I think that's what sets us apart a little bit from some of the peers here. I spend a lot of time working with not just the point person, which is usually the CEO or C-suite. I work at all levels to understand what they are seeing, what they see as problems. And so when you look at it from the various different levels and you ask a lot of questions, you start seeing where the pain is and what is really behind the scenes of that pain. So I spend probably, I would say, 2 times as much time on needs analysis as I do on the actual solution focus, because we really want to understand from all different angles what's going on.
And presumably, if you take the one example you shared, that's why the speed to resolution comes, because it's
Exactly.
entirely in their hands, isn't it? This sort of correction.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we provide, I will work with a team doing a lot of needs analysis, and then I bring that insight back to the CEO. We spend some time understanding their feeling about that insight and what they want to do with it. Sometimes they're okay with it being broken. It's not the bigger issue for them. And then we go forward with a plan of what we move into the creating value side of this, which is how do we address their desired outcomes, and we back into what is it that they want to get out of it, out of a workshop. Then we build in the workshop content to be able to adjust that, and then we start tracking and we move and work forward in that mode, to really continue the work. It's again like chiropractic. One treatment makes you feel better, but it takes several rounds to really make it stick,
Yeah.
and that's what we do.
So how long would your intervention include you for? And is it a one-off fix, or do you come back at a later date for a review or a top-up? How does that work?
It can be any of the above. So there are programs that start out with a great team activity, a team workshop, and then become a year long or 2 year long engagement to really make sure that it's holistically integrated. Or there's programs that are 2 days and then the team takes it from there because they have what they know they need and then they can move forward on their own. And then there are times when we come back in when things start to feel off again. So it really depends on the client. Most clients come back either for training or uh, refinement of the strategy, bringing the team back together to reunite. We work with that quite a bit.
I'm really curious as to how culture plays out in this. And if you take, again, going back to the one example,
Mm,
the change that requires the CEO to go from 29 touches to 4 touches is, the other word you could use for that is learning to trust. He's
exactly.
got to learn to trust his team and take his
Yeah.
involvement down a notch. That's a cultural shift, isn't it?
It's a
It'll
huge
be
cultural shift.
for him, it is,
Yeah.
or her, but it's also for the rest of the people around them because he's also their safety blanket because he takes
Hmm.
responsibility. If he's intervening 29 times, he's carrying all the cans for all the decisions. So
Yeah.
it may sound relatively small, but it is quite a mega shift to do that. So I'm curious
Yeah.
as to how culture plays out in the kind of work that you do.
That's a really fantastic question. And we have to take culture from multiple levels because we have company culture, of course, and team culture, but then we also have the intercultural play being here in China, which is completely different from a Western company culture. So bridging that gap, what we try to do is build in trust at a level that somebody can handle. So what I mean by that is there's blind trust, which say go and do, but a lot of people won't. They won't feel psychologically safe. They won't feel that they are not going to be hit if they make a mistake. So what we try to build in are parameters, you delegations of authority, ownership where they can say, okay, this is what I know I'm confident to own. This is how I can go back and ask a question. So in all engagements, we start out by testing the psychological safety of the team. How well do they feel they can work together? How well do they feel they can tell the boss they think that there's a problem? How well they can say, here's an idea. It might not be the right idea, but it could spark something. And so often people are afraid to do that. But when you get them one on one, and that's why we spend so much time in needs analysis, when you get them one on one, they're more apt to tell you their concerns. And then we can build those boxes that allow for a safe container to exist, for them to start the dialogue around, you have ownership of the process to hear. Then I want to have a check in, or I'll feel better if I have knowledge if the dollar amount is over a certain amount, or the complexity is over a certain amount. So we start to build it that way.
And presumably, the decision maker, the CEO, the C-suite member, whatever, at that point, can find themselves quite seriously challenged by this process, can't they?
Very much so, very much so. And we walk gently in there because of, obviously, egos are at play, but there's also a passion. When you're at that level, whether it's a multinational or a family business, you have a passion for this, and feedback has to be handled in a really gentle way, especially when it's developmental. And so we are very transparent with the information, but we are very secretive with who said what. We gather towards trends. It's important for the leader to hear trends, trend analysis around what the people are feeling. And then they can work with those trends and recognize where their issues are. I also reach a point with some leaders when I'm spending so much time with them where I can anticipate a problem and say, okay, we're hearing these challenges coming up in the marketplace. We know that we're running into this issue with competition. It's time for you to do a town hall. It's time for you to reach out to your people. Whether the people have told me that or not, it's an advisory role that I take on to help the leader be as strong as they can to contain the culture that they want. And the biggest thing that happens is that lack of communication. And without communication, you build fear, you build distrust, all of the negatives. So we want to be able to inspire them to communicate effectively. And that's a lot of what I do.
You touched on the multinational diversity of culture with living and working in Shanghai. Does that mean you have different techniques with different, effectively, international cultures? Or is that just an
Yeah.
experience?
No, I do use different techniques with different cultures, and quite honestly, there's different techniques that have to happen with um, uh, SMEs and family-owned businesses than with the multinational as well. We're dealing with different levels of complexity of the organization, uh, different dynamics of the diversity of the employees, what they need to hear, what they want to hear, what their expectations are. When I'm dealing with a multinational automotive company, they're 50% foreign, 50% local. The employees may become lifetime employees or they might not. Whereas when I'm dealing with a small, medium enterprise that's a family owned business in a small town, 95% of the employees have been with that company since the day they graduated college. And so there's a difference in the demographic, and so how we have to approach that is quite different. Even how we want to run a workshop is different in those scenarios, allowing for certain activities to help build trust to me differently than I would have with a multinational.
Fascinating. Fascinating. And do you operate mainly in English or do you use other languages?
I am personally language challenged, so I speak in English, but I do have translators that come with me. And I've recently discovered this amazing set of AI inspired headphones that allow for me to have a one-on-one conversation without a translator in play. But for the most part, I bring translators for workshops because I feel that
I need
it's
those headphones,
important.
even for people speaking English half the time.
Half the time I do. I always said when I moved to China, the first language I had to learn was English because there's so many Australians. and I couldn't correlate the words that they were using. I need a whole new dictionary. So um yeah, so I definitely bring translators along with me, but I don't let the language barrier stop me from working with teams. I find that it comes down to trust and pain. If they're feeling the pain, and if they're if they're ahead of the pain, they want to work with somebody before the pain really becomes intense. They'll If I can build that trust, they will not let language stop us.
Yeah, as coaches, we both know that you can't help people who don't want to be helped. So the pain has
Exactly.
to be meaningful, and the desire for
Exactly.
change has to be there. But to be doing that in the kind of scenario you talked about, using translators and successfully winning their trust, that's an incredible. That's a really strong skill set. That's an
Oh,
amazing thing to do.
thank you. That's very
Yeah,
kind of you to say.
very
It's
good.
it's taken a lot of years. Thank you.
And
Um,
you've mentioned the
yeah.
translators, but do you have a wider team as well that work with you, or is it normally a one lady show, or what?
It's always been a one lady show, but what I find is the larger the project and the more complex the project, the more resources I bring in. So I do have a brilliant partner that I work with quite often on the automotive sector based in the UK. Um, and I do have a small team here that handle uh, some of the truly local work. What I find is I personally am very good with the leadership, but I'm not very good when it comes to creating a strong relationship with say a factory worker. And so I have a team that handles that level of work where we're bringing these concepts to a team that's not classroom ready. They really want experiential things. So we bring that experiential learning into the factories where we need to.
And I assume most of your work is repeat work with an increasing, but nonetheless a repeat work with an existing client.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, you're spot on. And what I find also is so much of it is word of mouth. So much of this, and I think the same is true with the coaching world outside of China. So much of the growth comes from somebody having had a transformational experience and wanting somebody else to have that same experience.
Yeah.
And and I think that that's a powerful tool. It shows that there's trust and that they had success in some sort of transformation. So I love sharing those moments. And I actually, what I really love is people like you who are out there bringing these um, moments to the world rather than just that small pot of people that I would have that I have that direct word of mouth connection to. Your ability to bring that, just the concepts and the mindsets, the changes
Yeah.
to the
One of
world
the
is
joys
great.
for me hosting the coaching conversations, the people I get to meet, they've
Yeah.
got their own coaching practices, but they bring something new, something different.
Yeah.
And as you say, widening that visibility, I think, is tremendous for everybody, both for the client and for the coach. It's just a great learning.
Yeah.
Rita, we're coming to the end of this episode. If any of the audience want to reach out and want to find you, how can they do that?
Sure. Um, I think the best way would be LinkedIn at this point in time. That's probably my the platform I use most, unless of course anybody's on WeChat. I'm on WeChat. I have not set up Xiaohong Shu yet or anything like that, and I haven't looked at my website in 4 years. It's it's terrible. I am very much tech challenged. I am flip charts and markers, um, but LinkedIn, I always respond quite quickly, and email is also very fast.
That's Rita Malvone, and you'll find her as soon as you find her on LinkedIn, you'll know you're at the right place.
Oh,
Rita, thank you very much for your time. It's been lovely speaking with you. And everybody, that's it for this edition of the Coaching Conversation. See you again
amazing.
soon.
Thank you so much.
So, there you have it, the latest edition of the Coaching Conversation. Hope you enjoyed it, hope you found it useful. and I hope it did what it set out to do. As promised at the beginning of the program, here is a special offer for you, our loyal audience. If you reach out to me at gwiley@sagegreen.com and mention this podcast, we'll make available to you a coaching program for you and or your team at a 50% discount. So where can you reach us? So it's definitely gwiley@sagegreen.com. You can also reach us at the Executive Mindset at sagegreen.com, and our website is clearly theexecutivemindset.co.uk. If you enjoyed this, do please leave us with a wonderful rating on Google. We'd really appreciate that. So nothing more for me to say now other than see you again soon.